Hi everyone, I'm really excited because today we're going to be 3D modeling some jars. We're going to fill them with everything from candy corn to chocolate, and we're also going to create some candles. And I think you'll really enjoy this tutorial. If you enjoy it, please hit like and subscribe. Hey everyone, so are you ready to start 3D modeling our jar, the first part of the project? I have a jar here in front of me because it is always best to 3D model from a reference, either something in real life or something on your something that you've printed out, maybe a photo or a mood board or something. So use something to 3D model, but I'm going to use this that's in front of me as a reference. So first thing that I'll do is I'll get started off with a cylinder, and we'll think about the size we'd like this jar to be. Perhaps for the radius, we'll make it a 2-inch radius. Whoops, we're in centimeters. 2 inches. And the height can be 5 inches for now. That feels good. We can always adjust the height again later. This is just a good starting point. I press the middle button to go into the front view. I'm going to drag this up so that we have this lined up well. I don't need so many height segments at this time, but I will want a lot of rotation segments. This is something that we can adjust more later too if you'd like to, but I think this is good for right now. It'll look decent up close. You have to zoom in pretty far to see that there are any segments there. So this looks good to me. And I'm going to press C to make this editable. Going to go into polygon selection, and I'm going to delete this top part. We don't need it anymore. U brings up the selection tools, and I'll choose L for selecting the loop. Make sure that I'm in edge mode and select this loop right here. M for modeling tools, S for creating a bevel. And here I can drag to create that bevel. This needs more subdivisions, so I'll crank that up right now. This will look pretty decent. I'll add in some more loops with ML. UL to select this loop up here. And then I'll click T for transform or scale, and I'll be able to bring that in a little bit at the top so that our jar has a nice neck there. I'll add in a loop right here. And I'll scale it in a little bit. I'd like this part here to have a little bit more curvature, so I can do that with the bevel tool again. So modeling tools, M, S for bevel, If you don't already have these memorized, you're going to by the end of this. Great practice for memorizing all these hotkeys. And what's great about this jar is that we're only putting polygons where we need them. And you need them more along these curved edges. You don't need them here because that's straight. You need them around curves because you'll notice that up close. Now, this is going to get to be the trickier part because what we want to do is make it look like a lid can screw onto the top of this jar. I don't know if you could see this jar really well right now, but that's the plan. So I want to do this in a way that doesn't require 3D modeling a bunch of different parts and making this overly complicated. So I'm going to do this in the simplest way possible. And it starts off with clicking this loop right here. So again, UL, click on the loop, and we're going to rotate it because we want to twist. And it'll deform it a little bit. And I think this is getting deformed a little bit too much, although this looks cool from side view. So I think in order to prevent that deformation from happening, I'm going to need to add in some more loops first. So I'm going to click ML, hold down Shift so that it snaps. You'll notice that if you hold down Shift, you can snap to 1/4 increments along this edge. I'll click here, 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 and I think that's a decent start. Now we're going to go ahead and try rotating these again. And I want to rotate each one of these the same amount. So as I rotate these, I'm holding down Shift. And then I know that I'm snapping to 5 degrees when I rotate it. And I might need to adjust the degrees a little bit after I do this. Maybe after I twist this, I feel like this isn't enough of an angle in order to put on a lid, because we can see that the twist here on this jar is pretty dramatic. So I think we're going to need to twist this a little bit more than what we did, which is completely fine. So now this is starting to look better. We have a nice twist happening. And now you'll notice we have some nice loops that we can select as well in order to create this ridge. And that's exactly what we're going to do. When you're 3D modeling, you always need to think a couple steps ahead in order to think, how can I make my life the easiest it can be? It might even be easier to select these loops on the underside. So now that I have these selected, and I only really want to select the edges at the top, what I'm going to do is go into rectangular selection, hold down Control, drag, deselect by holding down Control. So now we only have these selected up here. Once you feel happy with your polygon selection, what we're gonna do is hit MT for extrude, and we're gonna extrude this on out. And we have preserve groups on, which allows us to extrude out in a way that doesn't screw up our, our geometry, which is always very important. So at this point, it looks like it has geometry to screw on. With these selected, I can hit MS in order to bevel these. I won't need as many subdivisions for this. So let's try this again. And you need to be kind of careful with this, because if you bevel it too far, you're going to start having intersecting polygons. So we just need to do the bare minimum so that this looks good. For this next part, I'm going to go into the front view again using the middle mouse button. And I'm going to select here and right here. This one group of polygons right here, if I can select it. I selected too much. I'm going to use ML in order to select it a little bit more easily. Or sorry, UL, that's UL, what we're using. So now we have all of these selected. I'm going to use MT in order to extrude. And hold down Control to extrude in the normal direction. But you'll notice that doesn't look right because we need to turn on caps. So I'm going to extrude this until we have a nice wall here with some nice thickness. Click UL to select this loop, delete it. And then I'll select this edge right here. I'll hold down Control and drag it up. And I'll have it snap with the snap button right here to right here. So now we know that we have this lined up. So what I'll do here is select these two edges, press M and P for stitch and sew, drag from one to the other, and now you'll see that we have these stitched together. These are orange. Looks like the whole model is orange. If you run into oh no, it's not all orange. If you run into an issue like this where you see purple polygons, there is a solution to that. So it looks like all the purple polygons are on the inside. We want everything to be orange. So what I'll do is select right here using UL. And now to select everything else on the inside, I'll use UF to select everything on the inside. This happens to the best of us sometimes, where we accidentally have some purple polygons. We don't want that. So what we'll do is select all of those, right click, select reverse normals, And now they're orange. So there you go, everything's orange and lovely. If you accidentally click on something in the wrong order, that's what causes them to be purple, is that order of operations helps Cinema 4D tell what's the back side and what's the front side of a polygon, because there's a back side and a front side of a polygon. But if you accidentally do something in the wrong order, it doesn't mean you need to delete and start all over again. You just need to right click and flip them. So right click, flip, align normals, flip normals, you know, you can do it. Okay, so now we have this lovely jar here. And we can do a lot of different fun things with jars. But first things first is I want to select this edge right here because it's bothering me that's not beveled. So we're going to bevel this and increase the subdivision so it's nice and rounded. Okay, so this is looking good. We have that inner edge beveled. That'll just look better for when we texture and light this. So a couple things that I want to do with this jar. I'm thinking of perhaps adding some candy corn inside of it. We could make some candles. We're going with the Halloween theme, which is fun. We can even wrap a bow around this. If you want to create a bow, there's a few ways we can do that. So we have this giant circle. I'm trying to remember the radius that I chose for this jar. It may have been 2 inches. We're going to find out if it's actually 2 inches or less. I'll change the direction of this circle because we're going to use it to create a sweep. Okay, so that this exterior part is 2 inches. I'm going to make this a little bit narrower so that it can go around the neck of this jar. Maybe something like this is okay because we're going to do a sweep. So this is an okay start. And then in order to do a sweep, I can go ahead and maybe use this flower actually. Because we want to create a rope, even though this says flower, it doesn't literally have to be used to make flowers. It can be used to make whatever you want. So I've adjusted this a little bit. I can choose how many petals we have. Maybe we have a few less or more. It's up to you. And now I'm going to find a sweep. We're going to place both of these within the sweep. And now we have a pretty cool looking rope around here. And if you want, you can even twist it. So we have this rotation down here under object, and we can have this rotate. So now we have a nice little twist in our rope. Now we have the second shape here. I'm going to turn off the sweep temporarily. I'd like to rotate this, make it editable. So now we have an editable bow here. And if we'd like it to look like this is actually attaching to the jar, we can do that. And this doesn't really need to be perfect. I'm just moving these points in space until they look like they are leaning against this jar appropriately. I'll copy and paste this again. This circle needs to be a lot smaller. And now we have a knot. I'm going to turn on the world coordinate system to make this easier to move into place. But that is how you make a knot. I mean, there's a lot of ways to create a knot, but this is what is working for me right now. I might move these bows a little bit further back. I think this is looking pretty good. I'm going to put this into a null and call it jar. And here we are. Now we have a few options here. We can turn this jar into a candle, or we can put candy in it, or we can just decide we're going to do a little bit of both. I think I'm gonna do a little bit of both. So for right now, I'm going to duplicate it. And this one over here, I'm going to adjust the points on here just a little bit so that these jars don't look like they're exactly the same. Like I just copied and pasted bows from one to the other. They need a little bit of variation, so I'll just move around the points just ever so slightly, and that'll make them look different. I can rotate around here, the knot, and now both of these jars look a little bit different. And just to make it look even less like I did this in 3D, I'm going to edit the body of the jar over here. And I'm going to make this a little bit of a shorter jar. Maybe we'll have it be about half the height. I'll select everything within here, go into object mode, and then I'll drag it on down. And the jar will be right here, positioned as such. Now we got a tall jar and a short jar. The tall jar can hold candy, the short jar can hold a candle for Halloween. Go back on in here. I'll turn on lines. And what I'm actually going to do here is select this interior part. So I can select everything using UF after selecting this first loop. Hold down Shift, select this inner part. And once I do that, I can copy this and with Command C and then Command V, paste. And now we have a whole separate shape. Now the cool thing about this is we can use MT now to extrude this inwards. So now that we're here and we extruded it, I'm going to go into viewport solo mode. And I just want to check the geometry, so I'm going to turn on lines. And this didn't quite extrude the way we wanted to, so we're going to need to fix this. Okay. So here is the jar that we had pasted. We can click MT. I'm going to solo this object. Hold down Control and extrude in one direction. So I'm going to extrude this way. And I actually don't need the center part, so I'm just going to delete it. And then I'm going to close the hole using MD. But now you'll see we have a little bit of a problem here because we don't like n-gons. So instead of clicking ND, I'm going to select, I'm going to use UL to select this loop. And I'm going to weld it together using Q in the center. Now we have a perfect weld. I'm going to use ML to build out another loop in here. And I'll use UL again to select here and to drop it down, because usually in candles but they don't melt evenly. And they don't usually even melt symmetrically. So I'm going to make this a little bit asymmetric. And I'm going to put this off to the side over here. I'm going to select this whole part of the candle and scale it in slightly so that our geometry isn't intersecting with the jar it's within. And if I'd like this to look a little bit less low poly, I can smooth this out with a bevel. That's MS to pull up the bevel tool. And now we clearly need a wick. So this is huge. I'm going to need to take down the radius by a lot and take down the height by a ton as well. Can move this to the center. Make it a little bit taller. If you'd like it to have a bend deformer on it, you can hold down Control to place that right underneath the wick and select the bend. I find Fit to Parent usually helps, so I'll choose Fit to Parent and bend it a little bit. This is looking better, much more realistic. So that's the beginning of this over here. Now to fill up this other jar with some candy for Halloween, I'm going to look up some candy corn. So this is basically what candy corn looks like. So we can go ahead and create this. Sometimes you also get these little pumpkins with the candy corn. They're a very traditional Halloween candy. These are really cute. So we can fill up the jar with candy corn. Candy corn looks a lot like a pyramid, so I'm going to drop a pyramid in here. Going to hold down Alt in order to drop this pyramid into a subdivision surface. And I'll add in some loops at the top and at the bottom after making this editable. So we keep a little bit more of the shape. This looks a little bit closer to candy corn. And I'm going to change this to make editable. So that I can make further adjustments. I'll scale it in that way. I'll select this right here and bevel it so it's a little bit more rounded. So this looks like your typical candy corn pretty much at this point. Maybe it's a little bit narrower. But that is basically the shape of the candy. I used UL to select this poly loop around here, and I'll hold down Shift and use UF in order to select down here. And now with that, I can create a redshift material. So I'll turn on redshift within the render settings. And I'll name this yellow. Add it right there. I'm not going to make super detailed textures right now because I want to save time. If you'd like to select a color, you can actually so now we have that yellow color. And now we know that these colors are accurate to candy corn. So we can drop these in here. All of these are pretty shiny, so we can bump up the roughness some. Sorry, the reflection roughness. Help if I clicked on the correct roughness. So that's our basic candy corn. Now we're going to need a ton more of these. So I'm going to actually use a cloner for that. And I don't know if you saw the other episode where I was creating French fries, but this is going to be a similar process as putting those French fries in the basket. So I don't know, I always find this fun. So now we have the candy corn all set up. All we need is a MoGraph effector to randomize the rotation a little bit. We don't really need to randomize the position too much. It's more important to me to randomize the rotation because that'll add in enough randomness in of itself. And now I'm going to hit current state to object. I'm going to turn off these two and hide them. That's what these buttons do. You can turn off items in your scene. And now with our candy corn selected, I'll select every single candy corn and I'll make sure to find the placement tool. So I'm using Command C to find the dynamic placement. And what I want to do is decide to have these act as an object instead of as a group. I want the accuracy to be really good. I'm going to save this in case if it crashes. And I want this to be accurate. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. So I needed to change the scale to 0.001 in order to have this actually go through the mouth of the jar. So this is a little bit annoying that this is now going out of the jar. So I'm going to hit undo and try this again. And try to aim these a little bit more directly into the jar. So now we have a pile of candy corn in the bottom of the jar, which is fun. And I mean, you can make more. As well. I think I want to create a redshift glass material just for right now to see how this is looking. We clearly need a light because it's really dark in here. I couldn't really see what I was doing that well while using this light, just because I had the IPR on, so I think this will make it a little bit easier to see what I'm doing first. But now you can see we have candy corn in the jar, which is awesome. It's very exciting for me anyways. Creating candy. Fun stuff. I'm going to turn off IPR. I want to add the placement tool over here, the dynamic place, just because I think it'll make it easier for me to work with. Kind of want to just reposition these a little bit in the jar, have them tumble a little bit more. So this looks better. This looks like a much more natural way for them to fall. So I just copied and pasted all of these, and I can move these up. Turn on this again, and kind of try to have them tumble around until they fall. There we go. And you can even do layers of different kinds of candy in here. So maybe we have some candy corn there. Could make some chocolate. Let's use a flower or maybe a cogwheel shape. We have options here. I'll go with cogwheel. First, I want to organize all of this candy corn because there's so much of it. And this is another reason to make things low poly, because then you don't have to worry as much about when you add a ton of them into your scene. Going to make this editable. So what my thought is with this is we can use this to make chocolate. So now that we have this editable, I can delete that. shrink this down. I'm enabling the axes to turn it around. First, I'll turn it this way. 90 degrees. And now the Z direction is wrong, so that's why I want to turn on enable axes to turn it back in the correct direction after I rotate that. And now the cool thing here that we're going to do is drop this into an extrude, and we definitely don't need to extrude that far. Ooh, this is just way too much. So that looks like a good start. I want to make this editable. Because I want to take this polygon in here, scale it in a little bit. I need to turn off enable axes first. And then for this inner part, I'm going to use MW in order to inset it slightly. This needs to be really, really subtle though, because if you go too far, you'll have polygons intersecting, so you don't want to do that. I'm going to select the center part. I like the constant shading, I think, so I'm going to go back to that. Hold down T and take this down a little bit. I know it's intersecting here, but that's okay because we're going to scale this in. So now it looks like it's a little mini Reese's. And we can add these mini Reese's into this jar. I really like Reese's. I'm not trying to like advertise them or anything like that. So you can tell here that we're starting to have duplicate materials, and that always annoys me because it makes everything look messy. If you run into that, just click on one, hold down Alt, and drag, and now it's nice and neat again. I'm going to name this chocolate and change it to a chocolate color. So we'll just mix up a nice dark chocolate here. Are you guys a dark chocolate fan or a milk chocolate fan or white chocolate? I've always loved dark chocolate. And then I'll name this wrapper. Maybe the wrapper is a slightly different color. Maybe that works for the wrapper. Now I'll just name this chocolate. Okay. I'm going to drag this up here. place it inside of a cloner. Same thing as before. Let's create another Redshift material. We're going to need a subsurface scattering material for this one. And the reason why we need that, I'm just going to drop in, let's just drop in a cube for, I mean, not a cube. We're dropping in a sphere, and I'm going to scale it way down. And I'm going to put it in here, and I'm just going to make it glow. And the reason why I'm making it glow is just so that we can see how our candle material reacts to light. We can definitely build a candle flame in a little bit, but for right now, I just want to see what is happening while I'm building this other material. So I'm also going to need to create an incandescent material. I'll drop this on here. I'm going to make this glow pretty bright. So subsurface scattering material should glow a little bit when they're interacting with light, and that's why I put in a sphere there just to help me see what's happening while building this material. You can actually choose some options here. You can choose if you want this to be like milk, marble, ketchup, cream, potato. I'm kind of surprised that they don't have a candle wax option, to be honest, because I feel like that's such a classic usage. Let's see what this looks like if we choose cream. This is going to take a little bit longer to calculate just because that. So you'll notice that this actually does look a little bit brighter. I suggest whenever you're making a candy corn, not a candy corn, whenever you're making a flame, to look at some reference online. Especially for a candle flame. So we can use that as a reference. I'm going to turn off the IPR for right now. I'm going to use a tapered deformer on the sphere. Fit it to the parent, increase the strength, and decrease the curvature a little bit. I'm making this editable. Just so that it's easier to scale. I want to scale in one direction, but not in both. I'm thinking that's something that we can try to create some transparency. I'm going to solo this. And go into shading with lines. Something that we can try to create some transparency is to actually create a vertex map. So if you saw there, I just pulled up the paintbrush tool. It is also up here under tools, but I sometimes don't like going through there to find it. So what you can do is you can just make some of these parts yellow, and then those are the parts that are selected. If you hold down Control, you can erase what you've done. You can choose how hard you'd like the fall off to be. If I reduce that, it'll be a little bit different. And if I increase it, you can choose the opacity. So maybe I just only want to paint with 20% opacity. You'll see it's much lighter looking. And we're basically painting along the vertex. And now the cool thing about this is we can take this incandescent material, add in some nodes. We're going to look for a vertex. And we're going to use a vertex attribute node. This vertex attribute node needs this in here. And we can use this to control the material. I want to use a material blender. I want this to be the base color, or the base material. And I want this to control Actually, I'm going to put this into blend color, and I'm going to move this over into the material color. And I need another node. Just a typical material node. I'm going to put this in here as the base material. So what we're doing is controlling where this material will show up with our vertex attribute. I'm going to go ahead and make this have absolutely no reflection. So I want this to have 0 reflection because it's going to be an invisible part of the flame. We want this to be completely see-through, so 100% refraction. And we want it to be thin-walled. So it basically looks invisible right now, and that's the goal, is to have this look invisible. And now we can test out our material by turning it on IPR. So now with this tested, we can see that this is working, but it's not smooth enough. So we actually need to go back in here and smooth this out. And you can do that with Shift. I can also delete some of this over here to help it smooth out. Let's try the IPR again. So this is looking a little bit better. You can see how it's kind of ghosting at the bottom. Which is what we want. We just want it to be smoother. So I'm going to grab the paintbrush tool, and instead of absolute, I want to be in smoothing mode. And this is helping, but maybe it's still a little bit too strong. I'm going to turn off viewport solo. To see what this looks like. And there's our flame. It actually looks pretty neat. Something else we can do is just you can actually make this flicker a little bit if you'd like to by just controlling this with a bend deformer. So I'll add in a bend deformer right here, fit to parent. I can increase its strength. And you'll see when I move this back and maybe it's facing the wrong way. So we'll need to double check that actually. Let me turn off this for a second. There we go, that's better. So you'll see we can animate the angle in order to animate this little flame as well, so that's an option. You can have it snap in different spots to different positions in order to animate it. So there's one more thing I'd like to mention. We need to add a texture to this wick, which I almost forgot, and I might just make it the same color. Well, no, I won't do that. I'll make it this off-white color. I'll put that in there. You'll see that sometimes wicks, they'll have the end glow a little bit, and we can totally do that. So I'm going to duplicate this incandescent material and name it wick end. We're going to change the color of it to red. And then I'm going to select the wick. Isolate it. Go into polygon mode. Make this wick editable. And then I'll use UL to select this and to select this right here. And we can put our incandescent material right there. Come out of that mode, excuse me, come out of that mode right there and see how this looks with the IPR. So now you'll see we have that glowing end of the wick, which adds that extra layer of realism, which is pretty cool. I'm going to rename all of these. I think I'd like another candle so I can hold down Control and drag this out. And if you did enjoy this tutorial, please give me a like and a subscribe. That motivates me to make more. And let me know what you think. And please let me know what your favorite Halloween candy is, because that's fun.